disco. Hey, how you doing out there, fine ladies and gentlemen? This is Gabriel Chapman. I am consulting systems engineer for Cisco Systems today, but I put on my independent, just Joe Guy hat, and I'm going to talk to you about what I'm calling the third wave of convergence. I'm talking about converged infrastructure, so kind of give you an idea of what the converged ecosystem looks like. Just real quick, a little bit about me. I've been in IT for about 18 years now, primarily in virtualization and storage technologies. I run my own personal blog, GabrielChapman.com. I know, creative title. You can find me on the Twitters at Bacon is King. And my email's up there in case you want to send me spam. So, real quick, so when I talk to a lot of customers, I spent a lot of time in the hyper-converged space. Prior to working at Cisco, I worked for a company called Simplivity, and prior to that I worked at a company called Emulex, where it was convergence of networking and convergence of storage networks, then moving into a convergence of infrastructure. When we talk about, or when I talk to a lot of customers or people in the IT space, they have the same significant challenges that pretty much everybody else has. They're a complex environment, they have a huge amount of data growth, and scalability of those two issues are a challenge. Not only scalability of applications and the IT infrastructure, but everything else associated with it. Does this particular app, is it going to scale to meet the needs that my customer has? And how do I build an infrastructure that supports that? So, what I call the legacy stack, or doing IT the hard way. It's the taking of the disparate, different technological products that are out there, all these different point solutions. It's what I call the status quo, or the legacy rack of technology. It's complex, it's multi-vendor. I don't know how many times I've built this type of rack myself inside various organizations I've worked for, or I've gone in and seen customers or end users with the exact same type of technology stacks. They have a server of some kind that's running a hypervisor. You're going to have some kind of storage switching, some kind of legacy storage solution, probably a storage array of some kind. You could have things like an SSD array or an all-flash array, backup appliances, WAN accelerators, you name it. This is preponderance, or this sprawl of technology solutions that sit inside the data center on a daily basis. And each one of those under the covers, essentially, what is it? You have a set of commodity x86 resources running some form of Linux with a management console. And in turn, you also have a lack of agility around this set of products. This is not a simple, easy stack to go out and deploy and get out up and running inside your organization or infrastructure. And gosh darn it, I don't know how many times I've been on a call at 2 or 3 in the morning with multiple vendors trying to figure out some solution to a problem that's kind of injected safe. So the finger pointing, like I said, it's not an agile solution. It's not an easy solution to get up and running. So, like I said, commodity x86 resources running Linux. So I've said, hey, let's accept this challenge and converge all the things, right? There's a guy named Alvin Toffler, and for those of you who went to public school like I did, you get to talk about some weird stuff. But what we had here is Toffler's was called the third wave, and it's a wave theory that talks about the progression of societies from a nomad or agriculture-based society to the industrial era, and now into the information age. And that's what Toffler's wave theory talks about. I kind of come up with my own Gabriel's converged wave theory, right? Where we started off with the first wave, which was basically a multi-vendor converged infrastructure solution, and then we started to graduate into a single vendor converged solution. And ultimately today what we're starting to see in the hyper-converged space is a single vendor-based appliance. And so here at VMworld, we're talking a lot about EvoRail, but you can also go see vendors like Pivot, Pivot3, Simplivity, Nutanix, Nimbox. I mean, this space is heating up, and we're starting to see a lot of entrance into a marketplace where we're going to see a preponderance of organizations look towards a smaller building block style technology solution that they can integrate. So if we look at the converged ecosystem and what it looks like today, about 2009, VCE launched, right? And right after that, we started to see, we had FlexPod come out and vBlock, both kind of within the same time zone or timetable. But those are really, those two solutions are great solutions, and they have a huge amount of market share out there today. But essentially what they are is the status quo. It's a legacy infrastructure in a box or in a rack. It's more in a rack, right? It's got a nice piece of tin out there, it's got some fancy lettering and whatnot. Then we started to see the OEMs themselves jump into this space with a single vendor converged infrastructure stack. So you'll have like an IBM Pure Systems, you'll have HP, which they've changed the name of their solution several times, so I can't remember what it is right now. You'll have the Dell Smart Start systems. What's up, Patrick? And you'll start to see all of these different solutions. And now you'll also start to see now with VMware coming out with Evo Rack, which will be something also kind of similar. You'll be able to buy a SKU from a vendor that has a piece of qualified hardware to run their rack of a software-defined data center. And then at the far end, though, we have about the same time, 2009, these companies were being created, these hyper-converged solutions. I know that VMware's been working on the VMworld product for over 2 years. SimpliVity and Nutanix have both had products that have basically been shipping for those 2 years, the last 2 years. And then you see some other players like Nimbox and Pivot3 that kind of cater towards the VDI space. And now, obviously, VMware's EvoRail is starting to come out. So, because people like pictures, this is kind of what it looks like from a graphical interface, right? We have multi-vendor first wave, we have second wave, which is the convergence of the rack base from a single appliance vendor, and now we see this preponderance of different form factors. So it could be anywhere from 1U, which is a Nimbox, which is a new entrant that just came into the marketplace a couple months ago, based out of Texas, to the 4 nodes in a 2U solution that Nutanix does, and the same as EvoRail. And then obviously there's other solutions out there like SimpliVity and Pivot and others. So what do common feature sets look like with third wave converged appliances? Most of them are going to do something around data efficiency or data virtualization, primarily around deduplication compression or the obstruction or obfuscation of the data path or optimization of the data path. Then you're going to have the infrastructure convergence itself. It's consolidating storage, compute, all of those pieces in that traditional legacy stack of technologies down into a single appliance. Those solutions are obviously going to be scalable, so we need to be able to not just, hey, I only have a 2U resources, I need more resources. Say I need 350 virtual machines, and each one of these little appliances will do 25, so let's go do the math and figure out how many we have to put out there. But they're also going to have a centric focus around virtualization, right? Every one of the hyper-converged and hyper-converged solutions today is going to have some kind of hypervisor layer that runs on top of it, and most of them will have some kind of virtual storage appliance that kind of helps manage the storage layer. Now the difference there is going to be EvoRail, which doesn't have the vSAN that's baked into the kernel. And then obviously some kind of unified management solution, right? We don't want to have to necessarily reinvent the wheel. Some choose to have their own management system that you can kind of cohabitate all of the different functions inside, and then integrate with whatever the hypervisor management links, like the Hyper-V one as well as the VMware ones. And then others choose to integrate directly with those hypervisor management consoles. 4 years ago, this space really didn't exist, which is kind of amazing to see how fast and how quickly we've seen the growth here. The initial message comes with Nutanix. We started shipping products around late 2011 with initial message around no SAN, and they've actually kind of changed some of their messaging. They went to the software-defined data center. Now they are talking about web-scale IT, and they're kind of defining a space here. We're talking really high trajectory in growth. A company that didn't have more than 150 employees not even 2.5 years ago now has close to 700 or 800 in offices all over the world. They're asking a $2 billion valuation and roughly looking probably to IPO here sometime to 2015. And SimpliVity 2012 comes out of stealth at VMworld. Their solution has gained a lot of market share as well. So if you look at the space today, SimpliVity and Nutanix were pretty much the dominant players in the hyperconverged space, and then what happens, VMware gets into the game with EvoRail, so you have solutions now offered from that was announced today, at least HP and Fujitsu, but also Dell, Supermicro, and others. So, and then at kind of the other end, we have these smaller scale solutions or new entrants to the marketplace, or ones that haven't quite taken off or got as much visibility, but they're still out there, and there's still new companies coming about that are going to be making hyper-converged or third-wave convergence appliances and putting them out there, because we're seeing a general trend of movement towards this type of infrastructure in a lot of organizations. And obviously, Gartner does a lot of analysis, and this was the first, what they called the integrated systems magic quadrant that looked at what the converged infrastructure space looks like. And you see everybody in this is in there, right? So all the major OEMs, obviously the leaders in this space are the ones that have been in this space longest, right? VCE has the dominant converged infrastructure play today. They're roughly doing $2 billion annual sale of those technologies. And then you start to see visionaries like SimpliVity and Nutanix that have really kind of adopted a much more different approach to how they do implementation, where something like a vBlock is an entire rack and a lot of infrastructure that be put into place. Something like a Nutanix or SimpliVity is something very simple that you can just basically plug in and put in the rack. The hyper-converged solution providers today are really trying to push the idea and concept of simplicity inside their organization. It shouldn't have to be so difficult to create storage. I mean, in fact, almost all of them use some kind of version of NFS as the storage construct because it is so simple and flexible for them. When we look at what kind of workloads and use cases that customers are doing when it comes to the hyper-converged space, it's pretty much everything from private cloud, managed service providers to, I need some resources in my DMZ and I don't want to have to buy a storage array and a switch and compute nodes and all the other things that I need in there. Well, hell, here's a little appliance and I can just plug it in to do all of that stuff. So, I mean, there's reduced costs down, most of the hyper-converged solution players today is going to say anywhere between, 3 to 5x reduction in TCO, manpower, management console, improved employee connectivity, primarily because almost anybody understands or uses virtualization today can walk in and turn one of these systems on and have it up and running in about 20 or 30 minutes. And that's a really powerful message that translates all the way from the bottom of the stack in IT for general purpose workers all the way up to the CFOs and decision makers who want to see streamlined to their costs and have their workers spend less time tuning knobs and dialing things in. They want to basically just be able to plug a solution in and run with it. So I think that's the end of my slide deck. It's the end of my presentation. I want to thank you for watching and listening. Come by, see me at the Cisco booth. I'll be there all day tomorrow and today doing more interviews and talking about some of the solutions that Cisco has around this space. So thank you once again, and thanks to the vBrownBag crew for having me on.